So I want to start with a question. Who has unlocked an otherwise impossible situation or opportunity for you? Think about that person for a minute. Or who have you unlocked an otherwise impossible opportunity for? Like you just didn't have the ability to get in the door, or they didn't have the ability, and then you opened the door. Essentially, you were the gatekeeper. Now, for some of you, that was a relationship. Maybe that was the current spot that you're at in business. Maybe that was a group that led you to your next spot, and you've just kind of followed the breadcrumbs along the way. But that's the power of networking, is that it can actually lead us to unlock the next situation and the next person and the next opportunity that we have in life. And so I want to share a real story from not that long ago. And for some of you in the room, it will feel fairly fresh. So not that long ago, a friend of mine shot me an email and said, hey, my friend's moving to town for an exciting opportunity. And this said friend, who might or might not be in the room right now, showed up to town, and we met at a local coffee shop, as should always be done, right? Amazing coffee shops here in the city. So we meet at a local coffee shop, and I hear a little bit about some opportunities and some excitement, but honestly, I didn't know this person, but I trusted the person who introduced her. You'll hear that theme a lot today. And so we got to talking and had a lot of connections, and then, I don't know, several months later, had an opportunity to actually be with their team during a retreat situation, and we sat during that time and observed her gifts and saw, maybe in the future there's some ways for us to work together. We started to talk about some coaching things, and believe it or not, that person now is a coach within the business that I lead in the group of coaches called Stay Forth Designs. So that person sends me an email doing the exact same thing to a friend of hers and her roommate. It said, hey, she's a baker. She needs an opportunity to bake in a commercial kitchen and oven spot. Gave me just a little bit of a background on this person. And then I meet at the same said coffee shop with this new person, and we have a similar conversation as to what's next and tell me about your opportunity. What are some barriers in the process? And from that, I then walked her over to the register, introduced her to my friend that owned the coffee shop that she now bakes for, and her baked goods are incredible. And she said, I'm looking for a commercial oven and a commercial kitchen. So then a couple weeks later, maybe it was only 10 days later, I go over to my other friend's coffee shop. A little theme here. I love coffee, if you couldn't tell. I go over to my other friend's coffee shop, and I go to the back there where they're roasting. And you know when you see someone is exhausted, you can just see it in their eyes. And his wife came up to me and said, we can't do this anymore. We can't keep running the business, roasting coffee, and baking. And I could just see in her bloodshot eyes she was exhausted. And she said, do you know a baker who would be interested in coming into this spot? I said, actually, yes, I do. Would you like me to introduce you to this said baker? They had a conversation. She started baking in their kitchen. They are now doing social enterprise stuff in this city that's unlocking some incredible things, not only in that business, not only in our city, but in the lives of people who just haven't had opportunities. It's happening in that very kitchen. The power of networking is just that. New opportunities that we can actually find as we're introduced to the next right person, the next right introduction. And so as I talk today, I talk from the context of being a local pastor, a context of being a business owner, and the context of being sort of part of a band of misfits here of people who like to start new stuff. For good or for ill, doing a lot of new things and getting some new things off the ground. So that's the context of my life that I speak from, but please hear this context first. I love people, I love relationships, and I love the power of the introduction. So that's the context of the space that I come from. This is my true context. These are my people. This is my driving why behind why I get to do what I get to do is my family. So we had a really nice picture, but the reality is we never just stand and smile like that. So this is more like it. Like, hey, get back here. My son asked me to dab, so I did. The power of networking. So what I want you to hear from that story is something I've learned time and time again, is that 2 cups of coffee can change the world. A cup of coffee could change something, could change your inbox, could change opportunities for you, but 2 cups of coffee can change the world. And as we think about that today, what cup of coffee or what sandwich, or what table, or what introduction, what handshake, what business card, what meeting for you literally unlock something that you otherwise had no possibility to do. It's incredible. I have gotten to see explosions where the right people meet, and sometimes they're explosions, sometimes they're a slow burn. Sometimes you don't hear till months later, like they didn't close the loop and tell me that they were working together. And months later, I thought, oh, that's cool. But people forget to tell the networker and the networkees that, hey, something happened here. But never forget that 2 cups of coffee can change the world. Think about that, $10 led to this series of things that are happening. And by the way, how much more potential will be unlocked as Karen gets to coach more and more people? Pretty exciting for me to think about. Let me start with this, a network. A network is defined as a system of lines or channels. But what I like even better is an interconnected or interrelated chain, group, or system. Here's the problem. You don't know you're interrelated or interconnected yet, and you don't know how the chain fits together. Those are just details, right? We got to figure that out. That's the hard thing, but it makes a lot of sense. Like our life, our vocation, our calling, our business makes a lot of sense as we look backwards, but it doesn't make as much sense as we look forward. And I believe networking puts a lot of the right pieces in place. And so kind of building off of this idea of a network, to me, says that breakthrough could be one intro away. One intro away could create that next breakthrough that creates that next chain, that interconnected link, whatever that might be for you. So here are some common misconceptions, and I'll address them throughout this time, but one of them is this. Somebody, they're just born a people person. Oh, they're just a connector. But I believe no one is born a good networker. Networking takes work. That's why there's a work in it. It's not easy. It can be a challenge at times. We don't have time in our schedules. We don't wake up with the first thought in our mind being, who can I connect today? But let me say, we need to begin thinking that way. And I'll share some reasons why. But no one is born a good networker. It is work. We need to put the work back in networking. And yet, we can see some amazing results. I want to share a process with you guys. So we'll move, let's say, from acquaintance first onto this screen, and we'll start at friends. Maybe you've exchanged business cards, you've had one interaction, you've had $10 together, and that's like an overpriced cup of coffee with a tip also. So maybe you're talking $6 or $8 that you've had with this person, 1 hour of time, a good conversation, and you would say, yeah, we're friends now. We put ourselves in the category of friends. We've defined that. So what's next? Well, I believe what's next, that next line, that next chain or link along the chain is partners. Is that you might partner up on one thing together. You might say, somebody that you have met in this room or you meet again in this room, you might say, hey, what about this thing? I heard you did this. Could we do this together? Or what about this one deal, this one opportunity, this one meeting, this one event? You're in partnership to some level. You're partnering on something to create an initiative. Maybe it's a one-time thing. Not a huge commitment, right? Then maybe you say, whoa, that was really, really good. We need to talk more. How could our organizations, companies, teams work together? And what you're saying is, okay, friendship's working pretty well. It seemed like, man, this partnership went really well. What about an ongoing partnership? What if we collaborate on something? Then your organizations and your teams have skin in the game. But let me just say this. You can't hotwire trust. Trust is what's needed to move from friendship to partnership to collaboration. There's more skin in the game as you go. More people are affected if it goes weird and bad and awful, or less people are affected if it's just, hey, your friendship just got weird, right? That's on you guys. It's not on me. Friendship to partnership to collaboration. The beauty is, as we move toward collaborations, we see larger groups, teams, people, initiative connecting for larger events. Now, let me just say, I come from a lot of nonprofit work. That's primarily who I work with. And so I'll talk some in the nonprofit space, but I really feel like this is both business, nonprofit. This is just relationship we're talking about today. This is just kind of some of those ground rules and principles. You can't hotwire trust. And trust is the commodity we're talking about today when we talk about networking. Why should I give my trust to this person to be able to go on to that person, to unlock the new relationship, to become part of a chain, for good or for ill, right? Now, even as I say networking, some of you are sweating right now when you're thinking about, like, it's a dirty word to you. It's not exciting to you. You feel like, oh man, I'm an introvert or I'm more reserved. And like the idea of going around and glad-handing people at a party and like tossing out materials, you're like, I'm out. I do not want to do this. So some of you are nervous and have just showed up today simply because you felt like you had to. So I want to push into that a little bit more because I think what's not true about networking is more important perhaps even than is. The trust in networking is the currency. Trust is the currency of good networking. Relationships matter, teams matter, therefore introductions matter. And let me just ask you this, do you actually believe that? Do you actually believe that you cannot live out your life calling alone? See, from my life, my faith tradition, I believe that we actually have a calling on our lives. I think almost everybody would agree to that point. Like we have something that we're uniquely built for. You can't do that very effectively by yourself. We need other people. And here's where the rubber meets the road. If we don't believe we need other people, we will never network. We'll never try to connect. We'll never try to find another tribe. We won't believe in the power of the introduction. If we don't believe relationships matter and we don't believe teams matter, then we'll certainly never go through the work to do introductions and to do them right. The greatest tool for impact isn't a tool at all. I listen to a lot of podcasts these days, and there's almost always some kind of question, like, what tool are you using these days? Are you journaling in an analog way or using this app or whatever else? And we're huge on productivity tools. This isn't a productivity tool. This is literally the thing, relationships and trust. The greatest tool for impact isn't a tool at all. And let me just say this very, very clearly. When done with care and integrity, that's the key. Networking is the single greatest tool to living the story you were designed to live. We don't think about it in those terms. We think about it as a business card. We think about it as an exchange. We think about it as an introduction. But it literally can unlock us to live the story that we are designed to live. Do you believe that? Because if you don't, I can promise you, you won't network. Somebody tells you you should do it is not enough to keep us networking. Am I right? Somebody told you this is a good practice for your business. Like if you don't truly believe you need other people, you certainly won't try to find your tribe or your team. Networking connects a human to another human or opportunity with the power to unlock the story they were designed to live. Literally can unlock it like a key and go, wow, that was it? Yep, I'm in. You literally have gatekeepers waiting at a door to welcome you into what might be next. Sometimes we don't ask them to welcome us in, and sometimes we should. Sometimes we say, hey, what about this? And they're like, ooh, I don't know right now. We have to be discerning. We have to be shrewd, right? Because we're not out just giving, $1 or $2 bills of trust away. Sometimes it feels like we're dropping a $100 bill of trust right there. Like that's got to be something that we believe in. It's an investment. And networking, as we invest, you're probably not going to see that unlocking happen the first time you do this. They're like, ooh, I don't know what the ROI is. Well, that's the thing about it. You never know when that one is going to unlock the door that you need to go in, because we don't even know where we're heading sometimes. We don't even know what door we need to be in, let alone what room or building we need to be in sometimes. And networking can unlock the way that we're designed to live. He didn't come up with this, but Truett Cathy, who's the founder of Chick-fil-A, commonly said this: keep helping others get what they want, and eventually you'll get what you want. And I don't think he meant this in a way. I mean, if you look at the life of Truett Cathy, if you look at how generous they are as an organization, I don't believe that he meant this in a selfish way. But the reality is, this abundance of networking keeps snowballing, doesn't it? When you unlock that for somebody else and you don't ask for a financial exchange from it, people go, well, that person unlocked it once. Maybe they'll unlock it again. And you literally get a reputation as the right connector or networker. That's what you want, by the way, is the one that opens up the right doors and keeps the wrong doors closed for you. We need to be discerning and shrewd, but I promise you, when you keep living out of this abundance mentality that says there's more where this came from, Once you keep introducing and connecting that person, they live how they were designed to live, that relationship, that introduction, that team, that opportunity, whatever it is, then they realize there's an abundance there that I want to share. And that's how it works when done right. Networking isn't 1 + 1. Sometimes it's 1 times a million. That's literally what we can see. Networking can create exponential results. The problem is we can't promise you that. It isn't 1 + 1 = 2. Sometimes you wonder, man, did I get any gain from that? You ever been in a meeting and afterwards you go, why in the world did I sign up to meet with them? I'm not sure why I signed up to meet with them, and after an hour, I'm still not sure what the heck they do or about or were asking or whatever else. Remember, it's an investment. And an investment is based on delayed gratification. Any investment, you put in a piggy bank of sorts, or a Roth or an IRA or whatever it looks like, and then later, someday, there's an exponential result. That's the goal. But it's about delayed gratification. Don't stop networking when you're 0 for 5 or think you're 0 for 5. These things take time to mature. But networking can create exponential results. You can't truly live your calling alone like we were talking about. And it comes back to that. If you believe you have everything you need to succeed, you simply won't network. You won't try to find your tribe. You won't move into your next right situation, your next right step, your next right opportunity. Networking requires humility. Because you see, if I believe I need somebody else, then I'm going to go to them and I'm going to ask questions. Sometimes the best thing people give you isn't the introduction to somebody else, but is the wisdom in their own life. Ever been around somebody that was dropping wisdom bombs on you? And you thought, I had no idea. And you just kind of sit there and go, this was well worth this $3 coffee. Or whether this $20 lunch. And they're just sharing things about their lives that you never would have thought to ask. Because you got together about business, or you got together about your nonprofit, you got together about your ministry, and then suddenly they're just dropping this life wisdom on you that you may use 100 times or 1,000 times the rest of your life. That's the reality of these things. They snowball. It requires humility, but don't mistake this. Networking is about empathy. It's about empathy. Because see, if we treat it as here's what I can get, we know that, right? We smell that out. And we go, nah, that's not me. But at its core, every really good networker that I know, and I think that's a thing. I think you can be a networker and a connector. I think that's a fair description. They understand it's about empathy. They understand I could be one introduction away. I have opportunities that I've stepped into in my life that I honestly felt like I had no business stepping into. But somebody else believed that I did. And then it became a responsibility. Well, they introduced me to this person. They introduced me to this leader, this CEO, this whatever person that I couldn't have gotten a meeting with. I should probably step into that meeting. And it invites you in to that next level. Networking is about empathy. We talked about abundance, but let me say this. A scarcity mindset snuffs out networking. It snuffs it out before it even begins. Because you see, if I'm holding back, and if I don't believe there's more where that came from, then I won't introduce you because you're going to go to steal my market share as if it belonged to me. Scarcity mentality in that. Abundance mentality says we are better together. It says community. It says neighborhood. It says ecosystem. It says agents working together from different companies, different organizations, different nonprofits. It says as the water level rises for you, our boat rises as well because we're on the same water. It says something bigger than ourselves. And if we're all honest, don't we want to be around those people anyway? People with the scarcity mentality, we don't want to be around because they're gripping everything they have so tightly. And yet we all do this at moments. We all feel fearful. Oh man, what if this happens? You're going to have to push into that fear of the scarcity mentality as you're networking, as you're connecting to the right people. And by the way, it gets harder, not easier. The harder you get up the chain, those are bigger introductions. That's a bigger thing to fear. The business deal only gets more expensive. The trust only gets more weighty. It could only get more embarrassing if that meeting went weird when your whole team's involved, right? when you move from acquaintance to friend to partner to collaborator. And it doesn't always go perfectly, right? Scarcity mindset. We have to be careful of that. Here's a reality we all know. We smell the aroma of good networking. Like fresh brewed pour-over coffees when we walk into a room, right? And we all smell the stench of bad networking. And it is a stench, right? We know there's a difference. So we're using the same word to actually describe in one way a scarcity mindset or one thing, kind of a slick business move maybe that has gone weird. It says, oh, no, I don't want to be involved in that too. I can't wait to be in that room. That's a generous or a generative room of people who I want to be around. Does that make sense? Would you guys agree with that? There's an aroma versus a stench. So are you giving off an aroma or do you stink a little bit? I'm just saying. We got to analyze our own connecting, our own networking. The power of the introduction for us, there is power. The question is it good power or is it bad power? It's worth looking at. So let me share now what networking isn't, which again I think is more powerful even than what networking is. And then I want to dig in a little bit below the surface to actually some tactics of the how. So, what networking isn't? Shady tactics. Shady tactics. I don't call that networking. When there's a shady tactic involved, hey, if I can do this, this, or this, I believe networking is up front. Hey, I'd like you to meet this person. Would you be up for that? Getting it clearly out there in front of other people. A one-time exchange. I'd call that just a deal. And there's a time for one-time exchanges in our culture, but network well, my friends, because word travels really fast. The bad news is bad news travels faster, though, right? Good news travels fast. Bad news travels even faster. It's not a one-time exchange. View it as a relationship. It's not sales motivated, primarily. If we start with sales motivation, people smell it. And by the way, that deal might work. And you might literally win that battle, but you're probably going to lose the war. It's a long-term war. It's a journey. It's a process. It's not self-focused. If I go in to network just for myself, not for anybody else I know or a future opportunity or the abundance of what might happen in our community or in our organization, if I just go in for that, I can tell you it's going to be limited to that one time, and people are going to say, yeah, I did that once, and I don't think I'll do that again. I'm telling you, these are the kind of things people tell me when you ask. You have to dig. Nobody's trying to share bad news, bad rumors, but when you say, hey, how was that doing business with this person? It's kind of like, well, I don't want to share too much, but like that's all I needed to hear, right? I've heard that a bunch, and that's my friend of mine saying, wink, wink, don't do it, versus, oh my goodness, their quality. And you never know when that email introduction is going to show up. That series of events that leads us to today, or this opportunity, or the future, whatever that might look like. Good networking isn't individualistic. Me, I, our organization, what can we get out of this? You've got to lift up a little bit to think, how could us working together actually be better together for larger groups of people? How could that unlock something bigger than ourselves? Last one, it isn't fast and sloppy. It isn't fast and sloppy. It's just to like do that. And we've all done the introduction where it's like, oh, here you go. And then we drop that person and they're gone. And whether it was an introduction actually live, whether it was one through email that was like, who's this person? And somebody drops somebody on me. And I'm like, okay, so there's another human. This happened to me through a text message not that long ago. I'm like, give me some context, please. And so good intentions, but it was too fast. It was too sloppy. And really, I had to then go back and find a whole lot of information. So, what good networking is? It's heart-driven. Even if you see potential for that next opportunity, we literally have to bring it just from head game or dollar game or introduction game to be heart-driven. It's empathetic. It's value-adding. I'm going to talk about adding value in just a little bit. It's others-focused. It's first coming in that meeting, not saying, here's the thing I'm going to fight for in this meeting, but here's the thing that maybe I could get involved with, Or maybe I can go in with the posture of I could unlock that person in some way or introduce that person. If you go in with the mindset of wanting to find a person to introduce them to who's the right fit, you often find it. Now, probably not right on the spot, but if you're looking for it, you often find what you're looking for. And we've all been to that meeting where we get bowled over in the process. Like, hey, just wanted to hear, do you have a wife and kids, or do you work somewhere? And it was just, bam, we just got bowled over. It's kind of like, man, I don't think it works that way. But what networking is team-centered. To say, are we supposed to be on the same team? Are we going to work the spectrum from acquaintance to friend to maybe there's a way we could partner? Maybe even eventually we're supposed to collaborate. What good networking is, the last thing, slow and calculated. Slow and calculated. Something in us thinks if we can introduce somebody fast, that's a bigger win, quicker. What's crazy is it could actually be no win, and it could actually be a sign that that person doesn't want to work with us. The more calculated the leader is, the more calculated the introduction should be. Here's why I introduced you, and I'm going to do it slowly, and I'm going to make sure they understand it. And I'll actually talk about that in the do this part of that. So just think slow and calculated versus fast and sloppy. But let me get really specific here, talking tactics. Don't do this. Don't assume someone wants to utilize your connection. Don't assume because, oh yeah, somebody came to mind, I went ahead and introduced you. Oh, hey, I just want to tell you I'm leaving town next week, and I actually exited that industry last week. I didn't have time to tell you. Ever been part of a fast introduction that got weird, and you had to go and sort of clean it up? So don't assume someone wants to utilize your connection. Don't skip over their story. Really hard to be empathetic, really hard to unlock something for them if you don't know their story. Say you're trying to sell a house for somebody. Well, if you don't know their story, how big their family is, the fact that actually their house burned down in the Black Forest fires a little while ago, and actually they had a huge ranch out there, and they're grieving the fact that they're going to have to move to a smaller place, closer to the city, closer to a job, then you actually know nothing about what they want in a home, right? Until you know their story. So don't do that. Don't present written materials right out of the gate. All right, so I come from nonprofit land. We are the worst, all right? Here's our thing. Here's why you should support it, and it always talks about money. So before we've even had our first cup of coffee, it's like, barista, check please. Let me take that coffee to go. The person's already asking me for money. I don't even know the person's name. I don't know anything about their story. Present those written materials. The next one is don't make an immediate ask. Don't make an immediate ask. You have no equity in that. You are bankrupt at this point. You need to earn a little relational cash before you can go cash it in. Don't make an ask. You don't even understand yet their story, where they're coming from, or what they have that they're passionate about or to unlock or bring to the story. Don't assume you know what they desire from you. You might have thought, hey, we're meeting together, but the reality is they might not be meeting about that house that you're selling or about that, new social enterprise that you're starting. They might not be meeting about that. They actually might say, hey, somebody told me that you are amazing at, taming dogs in this way, or you are amazing at telling people about the best coffee shops in the city, or the best this, or the best that, and you're like, oh, okay, actually isn't about business at all. Or this person just introduced me because I moved here and you're the only person that they know. Oh, okay, cool. I'm just doing this to cash in favor for a friend. Whatever that is, don't assume you know what they desire in networking. Don't introduce them to others too quickly. Just don't do it. You don't know them yet. So you're going to cash in on trust that you don't know yet if there's somebody that you want to work with, you want to be in relationship with over the long haul. So don't introduce too quickly. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Whatever you do. Although we all have dreams inside of us as to how this might unlock something huge. But don't tell people that. Just say, I know this person. It feels like you'd be a good fit in the process. Underpromise and then overdeliver. Last one, don't monetize connections too quickly. Let's just be honest. Money makes stuff weird. And it's okay if we're mature enough, discerning enough to make things weird. If we go there, Now, it may be 45 minutes into the meeting, they're like, okay, cool, I'm ready. Or 4 minutes in, okay, I'm ready to talk about this. Let them talk about the money aspect of it. But when we try to monetize the connections too quickly, it gets weird. Had a guy call me. He's literally a professional networker. He's a headhunter. He's looking for something. And then it just went, I wanted to understand the story, the context of this role they were looking for. Hey, do you know someone for this? Hey, here's this. What about that? And he's talking numbers. I was like, I don't even know, man. I'm just driving home, and I gave you 15 minutes because I had no idea why we were talking on the phone right now. Goes in for the kill. Now, please do this, is the next section. Please do this. Ask if they would like the connection. Literally say, would you like me to introduce somebody to you that might be a good fit? Tell them a little about that person. Get their invitation. Next one, please ask them to share their story. When I meet with somebody and they actually want to hear my story, they actually want to hear about something bigger than just what I do, I'm liable to trust them. And I would bet that you're the same way. Pursue human connection over the big deal. Because here's the reality. What happens once you close that big deal? Do you still want to be connected to that person? Do you want to do another big deal with them later? Because we started in that as a trust factor, right? Friendship to partnership. Don't try to hotwire that and move from friendship to collaboration. Hey, are our organizations working together? Well, they shouldn't. That always gets weird because we don't even know. We haven't even worked together on a project or a process specifically. Please do this. Add tangible value. Just keep dropping value bombs on people. Add tangible value. You even ask, how can this meeting be helpful for you? How could I add value to you? Just be honest in that and let them serve it up for you. Is there anything I can do for you? Is a great question. How can I help? If you have no idea why we're meeting, how can I help? And somebody who's ready coming in will actually have 2 or 3 things. What's interesting is sometimes I meet with people and say, how can I help? And they actually have no idea. It's a little bit disrespectful, I think, to show up to a meeting where you have no idea why you're meeting. And that's just me. I showed up to a meeting once, and there was a guy, CEO kind of guy. I hadn't researched him. My fault. He was a big shot. He should have been never meeting with a little peewee like me. So I go to this guy. Literally, I should have known when at the bottom there was an unlock code for the elevator. And I'm going, oh, what am I walking into? I thought one thing about this person. Turns out they were a nonprofit leader, but they did that like 4 hours a week. And then they like ran this other corporation and like flew around in his jet the rest of the time. So I walk in, and he literally, a couple minutes in, he hears my story. He does a great job. And then he says, so how can I help? What are you looking for? And I had nothing. I didn't even know what I wanted. You know what he did, and he should have done? He ended the meeting about 5 minutes later and said, wow, well, thanks for coming and sharing your story. That was it. The dude moved on because he had millions of dollars to make doing something else from somebody that knew what they wanted from him. That's an extreme example. But going in, if somebody were to say, what do you want? Do you know? Well, could you help me understand the city a little bit better? Do you have one introduction of this person, which that gal did over the coffee shop? What are you looking for? How can I help? Well, I'm actually looking for this commercial kitchen. Wait a minute. About 10 days later, that was really helpful. Please do this. Ask specifically how you can help them. Please do this. Introduce them to others slowly at the rate by which they can handle. By the way, I think email is a proper introduction still these days. I think text can be really, really quick to somebody, but if you don't know that person, then you're like, do I have to answer right now? It can be invasive if it's in an evening, and it doesn't create it as a business type sense. It's really quick, and you think, why does this person need to meet with me really quickly? It puts me a little bit into chaos mode versus I'll answer it Monday. It's not as cool to like wait 3 or 4 days to answer a text these days, you know? Kind of a little bit unkosher in that sense. Please underpromise and overdeliver. Say, well, what I tend to say to somebody when they come to me with an opportunity or, hey, we're just looking for somebody that can fill this role. Hey, could you shoot me that? I actually have a queue on my computer. If you just shoot me that job description, what I do is look it over, and then I've got it in my brain real quick, and then I'll put it in a queue right there on my desktop. And I'm trying to, the same would be true of somebody that's looking for an opportunity. Hey, just shoot me a paragraph, 2 or 3 things, what you're looking for, and then I'll put that in my queue. And I actually have a queue. I actually have a place where I save those kind of things. Under promise and over deliver. I say, yeah, what I can promise, I'll keep that in mind. If the right opportunity comes up, I would love to introduce you. What can you promise them? Go ahead and promise, but make it a little promise. Please do this. Keep a file of opportunities and people, even if it's just in your brain. Please do this. Wait for value adds before monetizing. Before asking for anything, add value to them. Please do this. Check back later to see if the connection was a fit. If you don't know, then you go, yeah, actually, 6 months ago when you introduced me to this person, oh, that was terrible. That was awkward. Well, why? Help me understand that. Does that make sense? To check back later, to close the loop. If it's a success, that person at least deserves a thumbs up. They don't need money. Gift cards, awesome. If that ever works and you have a business deal, there's nothing like getting a gift card in the mail for an introduction to go not only does that matter, but I can take my wife out to eat. That's awesome. That's double awesome. Let me share a few tactics, and then let me bring this down for a landing. Networking tactics, very, very important. So when we talk about adding value, we add more value, we keep adding value. So that's the thing in this conversation is value. If you keep adding value, you're going to have more trust. It's pretty simple. Add more value than you take. It's an equity game. So networking tactics here, ways to continue to add value. Find mutual friends. Find a mutual friend first. So Facebook's awesome for this, is to say, who are we already connected to? No way, how'd you know this person from the past? It always starts a good conversation. Look under their mutual friends even before you're friends with them. That's a great conversation starter, not to schmooze them, but to go, wait, you know my cousin? This happens, right? It's crazy. It's in this city, it's about 1.2 degrees of separation. Somewhere else, it's 3.7, It's crazy the kind of connections that we have here, but Facebook really has leveled the playing field on mutual friends. The next tactic, ask trusted friends about this person. Here's the reality. You're endorsing them. Ask a trusted friend. Before you make that introduction, you call a friend and say, hey, would you tell me if there's anything that I need to know about this person? Do you work with them? Do you trust them? Oh, yeah, it's incredible. They babysit. They're basically like a godparent to my kids. Oh, okay. Or no, I wouldn't do it. Okay, that's great. Just enough. You're not trying to smear their name. Just enough to know, do they deserve my endorsement? Because when you introduce somebody, you're essentially endorsing them and what they do. The way they do business, the way their integrity, the way that they conduct relationship. Next tactic, only make intros that you trust. Only make an intro that you trust. And if it doesn't need that much trust, it's just one thing for one product over here, then all you need to say, you don't have to say, this person's an amazing person, they're incredible. Just say, this person's looking for this, and you provide it, you guys take it from here. That's pretty easy to do. Take time to think through the potential. That's a tactic. Take time to literally go, how could this work? This person has this gift and this ability. This business owner, friend, or nonprofit leader or whatever is looking for the right opportunity for their team. Let me think about that slowly. I trust an introduction from someone that said, remember a month ago you told me about this? Are you still looking to fill that position? That means they've been thinking about me and this opportunity for the last month. Thank you for that. Take time to think through the potential. Another tactic, ask for the invitation to connect them. A lot of times I get connected to people and there was no ask in there. And again, if I'm really close with the friend, I have a lot of trust and I would literally call them a friend. Awesome. I'm going to go into that meeting based on, said meeting that we had here, based on my friend because I really trust them. So the principle here is the fewer introductions that you send out, the more they're going to trust them or the better quality of them. So if you do a lot of them, but they tend to end well, people go, man, I'm going to follow every breadcrumb from that person because they've never done me wrong. Or they send me quality people. I might not know how to connect them, but those are always quality people. And that would be true of this friend that connects me to folks. Send an email giving your why to that person before the introduction. So somebody asks for the introduction. Before I send it, I want to go really fast because I'm doing it between meetings, but I actually go to that person and say, hey, I just want to tell you, I'm going to introduce you here in a minute, and I might shoot the email literally 1 minute later. But here's why. Here's what you need to know about this person. I know they seem really intense at first, but I promise you they're quality or whatever else. Give them some information to go off of. I literally did this morning. to say, hey, remember we were talking about this new potential with your business? I think this is the ideal client. I said, treat them well, and could you please give them a deal? Because until you know it works for one person in this niche, you don't know it works. I mean, this is literal stuff that we got to do. And then, of course, send the informative email intro. Informative email intro. Hey, here's a human. Hey, other human, you guys meet. I don't know about you, but I got a lot of priorities. You got to give me a reason why I need to meet with that person. And now you're like, man, he really sounds like a jerk. I don't want to do any networking with him. I'm saying we have boundaries. And if we don't do these things with boundaries, then the high-capacity invites, networks that we want to help build, those chains and those connections, simply won't happen. Just a minute or two, and then we'll push into some question and answer here. One of the greatest privileges that I get giddy, is when two people went 1 × 1 was magically 1,000,000. I love that. I don't know how it all works, but I truly believe that together we get to unlock things we never could have apart. And back to that question, do you actually believe that? Do you actually believe that you can unlock this? If I could just say something to us, probably really fast-paced people who are visionary and strategic and looking for the next thing, resist the temptation to just seek what you want. Resist that temptation. But it's a temptation we all have, right? This potentially could do this for me. Resist the temptation to just seek what you want. And be patient and watch what unfolds. Be patient. So much of this is a patience game. To say, man, if it's going to be the right fit, it's probably going to take some time to think about. There are moments when it's immediate. And that has happened, but I would say that's the rarity in that. And by the way, even when you do an immediate connection, we know it can take 2, 3, 4 days to get the first email out to that other person, then get the invite, then get the when are we meeting, and then your assistant sends over the time, and they do the weird request. Wait, I already agreed on this. Do I have to accept this through the email? I already accepted it on my phone. I don't know what's going on, And then 7 days later, like, finally we could meet for, 3 hours to set this meeting up. It finally takes an hour. Like, I hope this is really important. Be patient and watch what unfolds. I'm going to pass something around here in a little bit. Hopefully I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I hope I've added some value to you guys. So much of my heart beats for leaders to keep doing what they are called or wired to do. And so I wrote an ebook because I'm seeing so many people burn out and so many people as leaders live in such an unhealthy culture that we can live in today, a fast-paced, that their leadership is simply not sustainable. So I wrote a meat and potatoes ebook. I'd love to give that away to you guys in exchange for your email address. I'd love to communicate with you about some of the coaching, some of the consulting, some of the content, some of the things we're doing with Stay Forth Designs. So at this time, I would love to take any questions that you guys have and respect your time today. Thanks for coming today, by the way, guys. So questions, go ahead and throw them out. Yeah.
So you talked about some tactics, but can you talk about either the skills of networking or some resources to help us develop those actual skills?
Yeah, so number one, we could talk for days on the topic of networking. I'm pretty sure they have conferences specifically dedicated to it and all that. So squeezing it in an hour. I think at some point a skill has to be discernment, where we're trying to discern an opportunity, forward thinking of this kind of person working together, because it's all a judgment based on the future. Could these two people work together? Self-awareness is huge, because we're not going to have others' awareness if we don't have self-awareness to a level. And just to say, if I get a weird vibe from this person, then my friend who's wired pretty similar to me probably will as well. So this is probably just not the right fit in that. So I'd say those are probably 3 big ones. I'd say what's interesting is you could talk, hey, what's the right technology or what are the right tools? I think it's way less about that, and we all have an email address. I think there's really a level playing field with it, and almost the newer the tool is with networking, the more chance somebody's not going to do it. It's like, I'm not going to download that app to do this thing. No, I'm out. I don't need one more sign-in, login, whatever else. That's just me. Maybe you love that, but I'm like, no, I already have to jump through this hoop to be able to set this time up in an already busy schedule. And so I actually I really do think those skills are huge, but if the discernment of this person and you're listening, you're trying to sort of figure out what makes them tick. At somewhere, it's very relational skills in that. And I would say maybe one is just even thinking about the right timing for something. If you were to introduce somebody now at this time, at the beginning of the summer, that's going to be a completely different vibe than in the beginning of September. And so if somebody says, hey, why don't you guys meet in the next month? That seems realistic. But hey, why don't you guys meet in the next 3 days? I don't know. It's just summer in Colorado. We're gone all the time and that. So probably the when.
Any resources that you have liked in books or anything like that that have been helpful for you?
I'd love to hear from you guys. Any resources that are out there that you guys know of?
Speed of Trust.
Yeah.
What's that?
Speed of Trust.
Speed of Trust?
That book.
A book? Okay.
There's another book that's called Hanging Out for a Living.
Hanging out for a living? That sounds awesome. Like to do and maybe to read. Okay.
Greatest networker in the world.
The greatest networker in the world? Okay. These are awesome.
Networking kills.
Networking kills, which says there's no power in networking? No.
It's success through serving. It's by a guy from Belmont University. His name's Mark Maxwell.
Okay.
It's a really good book.
Awesome. Cool. Keep them coming. What other resources do you guys have? Any podcasts?
I have a resource somebody gave me last night, but I can't verify because I haven't done it yet. It's somebody I trust,
There you go.
and it's a fable called The Go-Giver.
The Go-Giver. Okay.
And I didn't write down the author.
Okay. Good.
There was one thing I said up front, I missed it. Thank you.
What was the last one you said?
The
The speed of
greatest
trust?
networker in the world.
The greatest networker in the world. That's great. Awesome. I learn a lot from, figure out who's the best networker in your life and the best connector that you know. I have one of those. And when I sit down with them, I literally ask them about that. Why are you such a good curator of this? Because literally, that's what we're talking about. You're curators of people's relationships here. What goes on the gallery wall and what says that's good, but that needs to hang in your living room. So we're curators. So whoever the best curator of relationships is that you know, go to them and ask them what they're looking for and say, please help me reverse engineer that. So the best resources I've had are people. I didn't even know people wrote books on networking. And so apparently I have a lot to read. So awesome. Thanks for that. Apparently there are resources. Go read them. Yeah.
So you talked a lot about one-on-one networking.
Uh-huh.
I'm a photographer and we just moved here recently. And I've been using Facebook pages and stuff to try to find clients and that. There's so many photographers here that it's saturated on Facebook. So what about networking groups? Do you recommend brain groups or networking groups that are some you have to pay to get into?
Sure. So there's a group, many of them here today, BNI, Business Networking. And so Josh, raise your hand there. So not a BNI. There's a networking group. They're business networking, but they're not officially BNI. And it's apparently there's no relationship yet. So there are some more formal groups like that it depends whether you're looking for industry standard, like among the industry, or whether you're looking to be the only photographer amongst a lot of other businesses. That would determine the direction you go. I find myself in a ton of groups normally, so I'm trying to get to the one-on-one relationship that can bear more fruit. If you find yourself alone, you probably need to figure out first, are you going to your tribe to learn more? It tends to be learning from that tribe like a misfits kind of club. Like, you're like me, awesome. But you're in the same industry, or you're in totally different, you're networking across different industries. And a lot of stuff online too, they call it networking, but it's really marketing. Let's just call it what it is. That's very different, a marketing conversation, than a networking conversation. And so, but I think at its heart, it is the one-on-one at some point. Even if it starts with a group, what really adds value is that one conversation that unlocked the thing, or that one person from the group that went and sort of secured that next thing. So if you want to talk to these guys, they have a great group and a great process. I've never been part of an official networking group, but I'm a part of so many different groups that I'm actually trying to be involved in a few less groups overall, and a few more of the get to the relationship piece of that. So, but I'd say careful of social media as the only place you're doing networking. It tends to be more marketing. So, yeah.
So I've heard a lot of conditions where people are introduced to you. How would you necessarily go from a place like this to where, hey, where's you introduce yourself to me, sort of thing like this? What can you give almost a live example of like how you would turn that into a connection or how.
Sure. So first, you need to say, in these 5 minutes, could we exchange what we need to for that to lead to the next thing? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. But you're kind of discerning in your brain, okay, is this a now kind of thing? Could I clearly express what we do, and then you have enough information you need to sort of get the word out there? Or are we going to need 45 minutes or an hour to be able to sit down to gain that trust or whatever else? Sometimes it's a curated room and there's already relationship there. Sometimes you're at a conference and you have days together. If we were spending 3 days here, you would naturally get a 5, 10, 15-minute conversation with everybody, and you hear their comments, so you probably don't need a one-on-one, nor can you afford it with everybody in the room in that time. So I would say that's probably the decision that you're making. But whenever you just buy something for somebody, whether it's a cup of coffee or a lunch, that just says, I've made a quick value add. Worst case scenario, and sometimes 6 years later, it's like, hey, I know you know that. And I'm like, who is that person? I look them up on Facebook, and they're like, oh, he said you treated him to lunch like 6 years ago. I'm like, okay, so I invested Chipotle in him 6 years ago, and that made a big enough introduction that he was, reminded that this might be of service to somebody else. We can't invest an hour in chasing down, because really it's about 2 hours by the time you secure time in every single person you meet, but 5 minutes at a time of building that trust. So that's probably the first discussion that you need to figure out, decision you need to come to. So, yeah.
I've gone to various one-time networking events, like Chamber of Commerce events and so forth. And I've been surprised to find out, it seems like a lot of people think that it's enough to just physically show up. It seems like I'm almost always the person who tries to initiate follow-up contact with people to have a one-on-one. And I was wondering if you have any tips to try to help out in that situation.
Yes. Not everybody needs that from you. And remember, it's still a relationship we're talking about. A relationship is two-way. Sometimes we don't need to get together one-on-one, but that 5-minute conversation is literally, if you promise them, I'll shoot you an email, definitely shoot them an email. That's your first promise. Go ahead and fulfill your first promise. In that email, give them all the info you need and a link to that. So instead of like bombarding them with the whole thing here, it's just, hey, just a reminder, if you know someone who's interested in coaching or consulting, we come in and do this thing. Like that would be what I would say, quickly. Or, hey, we want to help people get healthy and make more impact. If you, see any need for that, make sure you put the info there, but not like, all right, and I've attached 17 prospectuses for you, because I'm not going to read any of it. A link to a website, wherever they could go if they were hungry to go get there. And I don't know, maybe 20% of the people might follow that, or 5% might follow that. But that 1 in 20 might be significant. So if the person doesn't want to get together, that may be a sign their connectors or channels are full, or their business is rocking, and or they're just not going to be in that field because they didn't connect with other people, and you don't add value to other people, you're eventually not going to still be in that field, So those would be some thoughts overall. So Chad's making his way up. One more question before Chad just cuts this thing off. Just kidding. We want to respect you guys' time. Yeah.
Could you further define the scarcity mentality and maybe some pointers of overcoming it and working to be more of a people person?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, scarcity mentality says there's not enough to go around, so I need to protect it. It always leads to fear, and it rarely ever will lead to generosity. An abundance mentality, you can just flip that mindset to say, I want to see this person get what they need, and I don't believe I could bring that. And so the scarcity mentality often happens from people who grow up without enough, and so somewhere in your mind you learned a story that I'm never going to have enough. And so if this is really resonating, go see a counselor, because I'm not a counselor. I'm a big fan of counselors. I am not one. But if that's the case, then you learned the story that the world does not have enough for you, and everything you need you're going to fight for and white knuckle. And I'm all for hard work. This is hard work. And yet, the abundance says that with trust to say, hey, that's just how it works, that Chad's going to add value in a way that I never could. And by the way, it does not matter what field you're in, nonprofits, businesses, you could have all the money in the world and you could have a scarcity mentality. and you could have very little and have an abundance. And by the way, just having a whole bunch of friends or Facebook friends does not make you a better networker. I think it could make you a worse networker because you have less time. So I think the lie is I'd much rather be with somebody who has 5 significant connections, who is so generous with their time. Then I go, wow, this person understands it. Then somebody that has tons and tons of connections because they have tons and tons of responsibilities as well. And they probably have people that have tried to use them before.
Quality over quantity.
I think so. So hopefully that was a good understanding of that. Let's give University Assembly a hand for hosting these. That's awesome.